All right, so this is going to be a tutorial for ProteinBlender. The plan for this is that we're going to create this animation of the GLP-1 receptor in this kind of closed state. It's going to open up and bind to GLP-1 and then activate this G protein that it's bound to. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we have Blender open. We're going to go to the ProteinBlender tab, and we're going to download a PDB. This one will be 6B3J. Click on download, make sure it turns blue. And then you should see this protein getting loaded up here in the center of the screen. So just to zoom in a bit, I'm going to middle mouse and scroll. You can see this protein is all gray. So in order to see color, you're going to have to click on this shaded sphere over here. And now I can see that this protein is sort of sideways. And so I'm going to want to rotate it so it's in the right orientation. So you can see over here, the protein outliner, we have 6B3J. We can select it here by clicking on this checkbox. And you can see there's all these chains here below. So we're going to go ahead and click on this button to rotate. So I'm just going to rotate it this way so that it's sort of right side up, facing forward, like that. Okay. So that looks pretty good. And I also want to create this membrane behind it. So you can see there's this kind of gray rectangle that represents membrane. I want to create something like that. And so this is, I can add a cube by clicking on this. And I'm just going to roughly kind of approximate this cube. And now I'm going to just move it around. So in order to move it, you can click on this move button here. So I'm going to move it behind our protein, so around there. And I want to scale it so that it's approximately the right size. So a little bit higher like this, and then just scale it out sideways and a little bit more. That's about good. So we have our kind of our stand-in membrane here. One thing about this structure, if you compare it to our reference, is that there's an additional protein here that we don't need, this pink guy. This is actually chain N, so I want to select it and press on the trash can to delete it. So that's gone now. And now the next thing we want to do is animate the pose of the GLP-1 receptor. So it goes from this closed state to this open state. And so to do that, if you look at this receptor, so if we want to just focus on that and maybe hide everything else, we can click on this eyeball icon over here and just open the eye for chain R, which is the receptor. You can see this is all one piece, essentially. And so we're going to want to separate this top part from this bottom part in order to animate it. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is use what we call the domain maker. And so we are going to want to split this chain into the top section and the bottom section. It's a little bit easier to change the representation in order to see that. So, with this selected, I've just changed it to ribbon. Now you can more clearly see that there's kind of this top section and this bottom section here. And so now we click on split chain. And here I'm just going to change these amino acid numbers a bit so that I know I have that whole top part selected, but none of the bottom part. Press OK. And now we have two separate pieces that are made, these two domains that are made from the one chain. So this top part is going to be rotating in order to open and close. And this pivot right here is not exactly where I want it. I kind of want it back here. And so in order to change that pivot point, we have some tools here that you can use. So we can move it to the first amino acid. And then I'm going to just also scoot it back a little bit so that it's kind of sort of more back here, something like that. So that's just kind of in planning. I know I want to rotate it, so I want to make sure it rotates in the right way. Now I'm going to select chain R again, which is a receptor, make it back into a surface representation, make it this kind of a light purple color. So something like that. All right. So in order to create these two conformations, we want to make this receptor into what we call a puppet. So basically anything that you animate, you're going to want to make into a puppet. So with the chain R selected, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to create a new puppet. I'm going to call this a receptor. Press OK. And now you can see there's this orange cross here, which represents the puppet. And you can also see that under the protein outliner, we see that the receptor is now here with its chains below. And so now we basically want to set some poses for this puppet. So this is actually one pose that is ready to go already. So this is the pose where it's bound to that peptide. I want to say create pose. So it's just going to set the kind of the current state of this protein. So I'm going to say okay. And so now we have this bound state here. We also want to create a state that looks like it's closed like this. And so to do that, I'm going to take this upper piece and I'm going to rotate it around like this and maybe move it a bit. That, actually, maybe I'll rotate it the other way. Looks approximately like what we have. And so now I'm going to create this other pose that I'm going to call closed state. Okay. And so now you can see we have this bound and closed, and you can apply these to see, what these two states look like, these two poses. We're going to want it to be in this bound state for now, and we're going to bring back the peptide. So we're going to click on there, and you can see there's the peptide. We're going to want to make this pink to match with our reference. And then we're going to also want to make this peptide its own puppet because we're going to want to animate it moving in and out, or moving just in, really. So we're going to call this puppet GLP-1. That's okay. And now we're basically ready to start the first part of our animation where this peptide binds to the GLP-1 receptor. And so to do that, we should take a look at this timeline down here. So you can scrub around using the mouse and nothing's happening because we haven't set up any keyframes yet. So that's what we're going to do first. And so this part, right, what we're seeing right now is GLP-1 bound to the receptor. That's going to be basically the middle of our animation. So we're going to have GLP-1 start out here and then kind of bind, receptor opens. So this is kind of the middle state. So we want to create a keyframe. So here we're going to create a keyframe by clicking down here, create keyframe. And we're going to want to create keyframes for both the receptor as well as GLP-1. You can keyframe different attributes. So this represents the pose. This is translation, rotation, scale, and color. So you can either select them all and keyframe everything, or you can select one attribute and keyframe that. Okay, so we press OK, and you should see these keyframes appear here in the timeline. So once we have this, what we want to do is sort of move back in time before the peptide has bound. So maybe, around frame 100 or so, we're just going to select this peptide. So I'm just going to make sure that nothing else is selected. We just have this puppet selected here, and we're going to move it out. So you should see the orange cross when you're animating this. I'm going to move it out here. Maybe rotate this a little bit. Um, so that's going to be before it binds. Maybe even move it a little closer. And I'm going to create this keyframe. And this time I really only changed GLP-1. So I'm just going to select that. Select OK. And now you can see we have this animation. It's sliding in. This is kind of intersecting in a not very nice way here. So I'm going to create another keyframe here where we're going to rotate it and adjust this a little bit so that it doesn't look quite as bad. All right, so here we go. Gonna create another keyframe, and now you can see it kind of wiggles its way in there. And now we want to also animate the receptor opening. So I think at around, we want it to open probably around here, maybe. And so we are going to create a keyframe here of it's still in the open state. I just want to make sure that that is keyframe. So we're going to keyframe the receptor here and then just maybe have it closed out here. Um, so here we're going to close the receptor and we're going to create a keyframe here. And so now we can see this receptor opens and then the peptide slides in. The peptide is like not moving enough, so I'm going to create another keyframe, maybe closer to one. Uh, Maybe we'll just start it around. We'll make this a kind of a short animation. So we're going to make sure we have the peptide selected here and nothing else. And we're going to move it out a ways. So it's kind of starting maybe out here. And maybe it's, kind of this state and create that keyframe, just GLP-1. So now you can see it's kind of sliding in there. You can add some more like wiggles to it if you like. A little bit of random-ish movement. And an intermediate keyframe. And so that looks pretty good. We've got GLP-1 coming in binding. At this point now, we want to take a look at those G proteins. So I'm going to bring those back. We have that. The G proteins aren't exactly the colors that I wanted, and so I'm going to change them a little bit. So this guy is going to be a bit more on like kind of dark orange. Beta here, we're going to make it sort of a little lighter orange, and then gamma back here, select that, is going to be sort of yellowish. So let's start out sort of yellowish, but I'm going to make it more orangey yellow. All right, so that's good. So in this animation, what we want is beta gamma is going to move away together after alpha is activated. And so we're going to actually make puppets out of all of these. So first, we're going to make a puppet from alpha. And I'm making this into a puppet because I want to animate its color change. It's actually not going to move, but we'll go ahead and create a new puppet here. Call this GA. And then I want to select beta gamma. So make sure nothing else is selected here. Beta and gamma, B and G. And we're going to create a new puppet called GBG, G beta gamma. Okay. And so at this point, what we want, so we have this animation binding, and now we want alpha to change color. So after this binds, we want alpha here to become maybe red or something. And so we're going to keyframe alpha, just GA at this point, right when we have a bound state. And then we're going to activate it by changing its color. So we're going to select G alpha and we're going to make it red like that. And we moved it. We want to create this keyframe of just G alpha. So now you can see GLP-1 binds, G alpha becomes red, and now we want G beta gamma to move away, do some stuff. So we're going to make sure we have G beta gamma, the puppet, selected here. Sure nothing else is selected. And then we're going to create a keyframe, G beta gamma. Okay. And then move the screen timeline a bit and have this away and rotate that out. So maybe we'll rotate this a little bit and move it around. Create keyframe, just G beta gamma. Okay. And so maybe we'll add some intermediate keyframe in here. All right, so this is basically our full animation. We have GLP-1 binding to the GLP-1 receptor, G alpha activates, and G beta gamma moves away. So we're basically ready to render at this point. And so to do that, First, we might want to fix the lighting. So if this may appear a little dark by default, so if we want to change the lighting, what we can do is basically go over to the layout. So layout is here. Um, so the layout, you can see we have to click on this again to kind of see the lighting. And so when you are in the layout tab, you can see there's a couple things. This is a camera. This is a light. We can select that light, and then we can go over to this like little light bulb looking icon. And you can see that this is a point light. It might be a little bit brighter if we make it into an area light. So this area light is kind of like a plane that's emitting light. It starts out small. We can scale it up by just clicking and dragging here. So, and see that that's lighting the scene a lot better now. And we can also rotate this so that it's, maybe you don't want it right above. I think I accidentally just scaled it. Or, maybe you want it pointing like this. You can basically play around with that to light your scene, and you can see how that changes your scene a bit. So, um, maybe I'll scale that up just a little bit more. But once you're happy with it, then you can basically go ahead and set up your camera. So we set up our light. Now we want to set up our camera. So to see what the camera is going to render, you go over to this little camera icon, you click on that, and you can see that this is kind of not the angle that we want to render at. And so in order to change that, you want to open up this little drawer. So there's a little arrow here. You kind of drag it open. So you press the camera icon over here. Again, you drag this open, and then you click on the View tab. And what you want to do is you want to set this to camera to view. So it'll lock the camera to view. And this way you can just kind of situate your camera here. So in order to pan, it's Shift, middle mouse drag. And you can also just kind of play through your timeline and make sure you're capturing everything. Um, I might want to zoom in a little bit more so things are off screen when they start. So that looks good to me. So this is going to be our animation. We're pretty much ready to render at this point. I'm going to close this. And now to set up your render settings, you go to Output. And so you can kind of see you have some different options here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Um, this is the resolution at which it'll render. I kind of don't need it quite that big, so I'm just going to scale it down 50% from this original resolution. I can adjust the frames here. I actually don't need all 250 frames. My animation kind of starts at like maybe around 80, and then it only goes until maybe 200. So I'm going to change these frames from 80 to 200. And then I want to change where it's going. So I'm just going to put this on my desktop. So just select desktop, accept. And then I change this from an image to a video. So it's going to create a video. And then I'm going to go over here to this render tab and say render animation. And I'm going to probably pause the video for now so you don't have to wait for that. So I'm going to press render animation. And as you see, it opens up a new screen and it's going ahead and playing. I'll show you the animation when it's done. All right, so the animation is finished and I see it on my desktop here. And so we can kind of play through, have GLP-1 binding, and then moving away. One thing you want to probably keep in mind in terms of timing is that this is rendering at 24 frames per second. So if you want a certain length animation, you're going to want to make sure you think about that. So 24 frames is 1 second. So this entire thing is only a 5-second animation. But yeah, please let us know what you think of ProteinBlender, and yeah, we're happy to get your feedback and thoughts.